I'd like to call the meeting to order. We will begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice
for all.
All right, another good effort. All right, I'd like a motion to enter into an open session of the Long Range Planning Committee. Mr. Johnson?
So moved.
And go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say so moved.
Okay. That's fine. And a second? Mr. Komprosky? All in favor? Thank you very much. I'd just like to mention that Mr. Johnson and Mr. Razio are co-chairs of Long Range Planning. And Mr. Core, you can begin.
Yes, thank you very much, Mrs. Harrison. So this evening, we are going to have the building conditions survey report. I mean, this is a state requirement. The last one was done in 2015. They're done every 5 years. You might say it's 2022 and 7 years. This was actually done in 2021. You would be right in saying that it's 6 years. So because of the pandemic, the 5-year rotation was made more flexible. In any case, the BCS is something we learn so much for our building planning and our future budgetary work. And I think without any further ado, I would like to turn it over to our colleagues from CS Arch.
Thank you, Joe, very much. My name is Mike Andrews at CS Arch. I'm project manager, and I've been working with the district through the 2017 capital project. I should be sharing the screen currently. Okay, you're able to see it?
We can see it, Mike. Yep.
Yep.
I also have with me today Dan Woodside, who's the president of CS Arch, and CJ Goodwin, who's worked with the district on capital projects back to the mid to early 2000s. Please interrupt if you have any questions. CJ promised me he would tell me if anyone is polite and puts their hand up in case I don't notice it. So that's your job, CJ. Building condition surveys, what the building condition survey is, it's an SED mandated process to be completed every 5 years. We are required to survey the existing facilities and site conditions utilizing SED's 129 question assessment survey. It's about as dry as it sounds. We assess the remaining life of building components and systems. We provide budgets for components with 5 years or less of useful life. We provide ratings of existing building systems, provide overall building condition ratings, which are based on the systems. And we complete an online survey document by March 1st of 2022. So what SED mandates is we finish up our walkthroughs of all of the buildings in the fall. That should be completed by December. And then we process that information into the reporting that we're going to see this evening so that we can upload it to the portal by March 1st. So some of the ratings and things we're looking at, there are system rating for different components of each part of the building. The systems that we look at are anything from play fields to heating systems to columns, foundations, windows, doors. We have to rate each component as E for excellent, S for satisfactory, which means it's functioning reliably with routine maintenance. It is unsatisfactory, which either means it's unreliable or it's exceeded its useful life and that repair or replacement is needed. It's non-functioning, or it's CF, or is a critical failure. If you have a critical failure, that's about as bad as it gets. The district has no non-functioning or critical failures to report on. So we're in good shape with that. System classifications are each one of the individual items that we look at, like playfields, for example, are undefined. They don't have a classification as either being health and safety related, like electrical, heating systems, and ventilation systems, or S as structural, which are for foundations, columns, roofs, skylights. So we look at the systems, and the systems each are classified in different ways. The overall building condition rating is based on excellent. That means that all health and structural items are rated excellent. All others are satisfactory. S for satisfactory, which means all health and safety or structural items are rated satisfactory or better. And we have most of the buildings in the district are satisfactory. Next is unsatisfactory, and that's if we have any, meaning a single health, safety, or structural item is unsatisfactory. The building itself falls into an unsatisfactory category. And then failing, which if you have a building which is failing, it's any health, safety, or structural item noted as non-functioning or critical failure. If that were the case, when it gets uploaded to SED, they could revoke your certificate of occupancy, and that would affect occupancy of the building. Again, we don't have anything that falls in that category. The 5-year plan, so what we do here is we incorporate the building condition survey findings. We meet with stakeholders, administrative staff, and facility committees to gather information, establish work scope. We establish educational facility needs, synthesize the educational facility needs into a plan, and phase the plan in 5 years in an SED format. And then the executive summary, which was forwarded on Friday, is something that is submitted to SED along with the building condition surveys that we upload to the portal. So for the facility evaluation reports, which we're going to go into some detail for each of the buildings, we base those reports based on our building observations. CJ and I walked all of the buildings with Brian Kraft, and we looked at every nook and cranny in all of the buildings to assess their condition. We also looked at the previous building condition survey as a guide to where we were and where we need to go. We looked at the district 5-year plan. That would have been the last one that was created in 2015. I believe it was updated in 2018. And then there are conversations with district administration and staff carrying forward past educational and programmatic needs that may not have been met in the 2017 capital project. So we're still tracking those items as if we want to see them processed through. So as we go into the individual buildings, I'm going to touch on some of the highlights in each of the buildings. If you had a chance to look at the executive summary, you'll see that there might have been 100 items in each of the buildings. I just pulled some bullet points from them to give you a general sense of where we are with the systems, not to go through everything individually. So if you see me skipping around on these, I'm just going to hit the highlights because there are a lot of slides, and I don't want to do that to you. Brian, if there's anything absolutely critical that you would like to bring up that I skipped over, please interject, if that's okay. So yes. I'm gonna start then with Blue Creek. There is asphalt paving around Blue Creek that does need to be replaced. There is clay sewer tile. There's a sewer pipe which leads to the building. If you see the designation after them, that's just letting you know that that's a health and safety item, which is what the H stands for. Blue Creek, we did a number of abatement of flooring in the past projects, but there still remains some spaces that we haven't gotten to yet that needs to remain on the list to take care of in future projects. Replace corridor doors and non-labeled glazing. You will see this in all of the buildings in the district. We have some original doors and glass that have been in those buildings, specifically at classrooms, since 1950s when they were originally installed. They have outlived their useful life twice over at this point. What we would recommend doing is replacing them with new doors. You actually have replaced all of the hardware on the doors, so it's possible that the lock sets could be replaced on the new doors. Could be used on the new doors, not replace those, but we would actually look at replacing the doors and providing electronic hold opens that are tied to the fire alarm system. So if a teacher wanted to keep his or her door open, which is allowed currently with COVID protocols, it wouldn't have door stops, so that when the fire alarm went off or when the building went into lockdown, all of the doors would automatically close. So there are safety features that go along with it, but those are the kind of things when we replace the doors that we would want to do. Replacing the glazing is the same thing. There's some glass in the building which is not labeled, meaning it's not tempered safety glass. So we want to be sure that it's replaced with the appropriate glass type for the facility, which isn't going to cause damage to a student if it's fallen into. At Blue Creek, we have hazardous material in the crawl space that we need to abate. This is becoming more of an issue in the buildings because as we have heating piping or domestic piping that's from the 50s that has a valve that breaks or there's an issue where people need to go down there, the abatement needs to be taken care of in a lot of cases before the piping can be fixed. So it compounds a useful life issue with piping with an issue that there are hazardous materials that are in the space. Roof system replacements. There are some square footage of roofing that needs to be replaced in each of the buildings. Blue Creek, the areas we would be looking to do were last replaced in 95 or 97, so that's the time frame. Toilet rooms, there are some toilet rooms in Blue Creek that are original from 1950s that need to be updated. They have definitely served their useful life. There's a lot of original galvanized domestic water piping. That's the tap water that goes to sinks. This all should be replaced, just dealing with lead issues. And we've also had issues with copper piping that was installed before 1986 being problematic, both potentially for lead and for pinprick thin walls on it. We've had issues with it breaking. So the recommendation would be as we get into the spaces to replace that piping. The vault transformer, there's classroom ventilation that needs to be updated. There is mechanical equipment in different areas of the building. We have an original stage electric panel and outlets and associated wiring that needs to be replacing at Blue Creek. We have stage lighting controls that should be upgraded with a power supply. We have some original electric panels. We have a few electrical panels that are remaining in the building that should be updated, along with all of the original building wiring should be updated. We have a general item for all of the buildings, and that's to provide lighting upgrades throughout the building. I think in the last capital project, the one that we're just closing up, there's a significant difference in the spaces that have been renovated with the light levels and the dimmability functions that stand out night and day from the rooms next to them that haven't been renovated yet. So it's bringing those spaces up with similar systems that we installed in all of the buildings in this last capital project. Providing new security camera system and replacing all cameras. In all of the elementary schools, we replaced the infrastructure, so the cabling and the data is ready to go for the new camera system. We couldn't afford or didn't choose to buy the security systems themselves for each of the elementary schools. So this expenditure would be for the hardware, the cameras and the systems, but all of the above ceiling work is pretty much in place and ready to go for that system. A functioning need, there's the need to reorganize kitchen storage cooler area to see if it's possible, because there's quite a bit of space at Blue Creek there, to reorganize that area as a potential district-wide food distribution hub. And then constructing a unisex staff toilet room in the 1991 wing. Are there any questions about Blue Creek specifically?
I think it's also important to note that Brian Kraft on the 31st of December also submitted his 3-year review. And Brian, you also talked about roofing throughout the district and stated specifically that we need to begin to develop a schedule for all other roofs in the district, all roofs in the district basically, because they're older than 20 years. And, you know, this needs to be a priority as we go forward.
Yeah, so we have certain sections of roofs, not at the high school yet, but the high school especially, that need to be replaced. But then even our better roofs are at an age that you want to have a plan to say, at this year, we should be thinking about it. We know a roof lasts X amount of years. So at 30, 40 years, it should be planned out. And I think with the BCS and the spreadsheet we're building with Mike and CJ, they're looking at adding that in there. So even if something isn't ready now, we have kind of a plan for the future with that.
And you also with major systems such as boilers as well, you've talked about a periodic replacement. And I think, this is excellent because I know that in the past, and also with asbestos abatement as well, I think in the past, we've been trying to limp along. And I know CS Arches, our partners, can probably verify that as well, which is, it's fine until you have a major catastrophe and you can't handle it. And I really appreciate your good work on this, Brian. I want it noted that you are very methodical in terms of your review of building systems and calling for a planned updating, replacement, and repair of such as well. So thank you.
Thank you.
Joe, if I could add to that, the other component that has been looked at in a very different way is electrical systems and wiring.
Yes.
Because of issues that we've had in district in the past year and a half, or 2 years with some spaces. So that's really taken a priority in the BCS and the 5-year plan in a way that it hadn't.
Yes, absolutely important. And I think, we can go back to last April about Hills and, we can certainly look at that and, hopefully articulate the need for updating those systems.
Okay, so then next building, if there weren't any specific questions at Fort Sperry, I'll go on to Bout Hills. I won't go into detail on a lot of the items that are repetitive. I'll just talk about some more specific ones that may pertain to this building. Bout Hills, for as long as I've worked for the district, has always had drainage issues in the playing field out in front. That area really needs to be corrected. We need to look at that system and to see what we can do to provide better drainage. As part of that, we have an existing storm pipe that runs out to a structure out in that area, which is an original pipe from the 50s that's asbestos lined. So that's a pipe that's going to need to be abated and removed. So that's something that I think it's time to try and tackle and take care of. We, again, have more VAT. Bout Hills is one of the buildings. There are a number of buildings in the district that have a lot of the popcorn texture plaster. I'm sure if you have seen it, you'd know what the popcorn reference is. It's on ceilings, it's on soffit, it's on exterior walls. It has very good acoustic properties, which is why it was installed originally. But it needs to go. We've been taking it out of any areas that we found it in the last capital project. A lot of that has been by the change orders that have been processed, but anything we've come across has been taken out in the last projects. And that is the order that we want to go through in future capital projects. If it's in a room, it's gone. There's no reason to keep it. So that's kind of the marching order that we're working towards.
Why does it have to go? I might have missed that.
What happens is you could have potential failure, Sandy, of it. It literally is inhibiting us from doing other renovation work in the wall. So if it's plaster on a wall, it's impossible for Brian to complete a work order and screw a new marker board or tack board to the wall because the surface may have something that you can't screw through. And it's, go ahead.
Oh, thank you. I see.
Brian, would you agree, or is there anything more that you want to add to that?
Yeah, no, it prevents in the stuff that's exposed in the rooms, prevents us from doing simple things like rearranging dividers and changing lights that are built into it that are pretty old. And we actually we have someone that goes around on the weekends just trying to caulk it, paint it, and keep it up so it doesn't fall apart into the room at this point. And the same thing with the pipes. It stops you from doing routine maintenance that needs to happen. And as you keep going down project by project, it just grows larger.
There are also, the corridor doors that need to be replaced, the roof systems, renovating the original toilet rooms, again, replacing the original galvanized domestic pipe and copper older than 1986. There are mechanical equipment replacements, building wiring, lighting upgrades, security camera. And Fout Hills is in need of a renovation of the nurses area and the nurses toilet room. We've done that in other buildings in the 2017 project. Latham Ridge has a new, Lavendel has new, Forts Ferry has new. So Bout it's their turn. Any questions specifically about Bout Hills? So for Forts Ferry Elementary School, we have asphalt paving that will honestly, asphalt paving will always be on the list because there will always be another section that needs to be replaced in 10 years as things get phased in. So there are areas of Forts Ferry where the pavement does need to be replaced. We have the corridor doors, we have the popcorn texture on the soffits, we have hazardous material in crawl space, we have the roof system replacement, we have gut renovate original toilet rooms, we are replacing the original galvanized domestic pipe. There's an old vault transformer that needs to be replaced. There is mechanical equipment that needs to be replaced. Stage electrical panels, outlets, and associated wiring are original there. In Forts Ferry, we also want to replace the stage lighting controls and upgrade the power supply. We want to bring this building up to match some of the other elementary schools with the stage lighting and control systems that have been provided in other buildings. Replacing original electrical panels that remain, providing lighting upgrades, new security camera system, converting the boilers from steam to hot water and replacing the steam piping, and to modify the tennis court area into a PE instructional space. That's been on lists for a while, doing something with those tennis courts. And it's something that when we come to the project, just has never made it all the way into a project. So it's sitting there as unused space. And there's quite a bit of square footage there that could be captured for other uses on an educational basis. Any questions for Forts Ferry? Okay.
Hi, it's Paula. I have a question. I thought that we were considering using the tennis courts at Forts Ferry for additional parking.
I've heard those conversations. I didn't know where that landed. Brian, is that?
Yeah, so we did it at Loudenville, but it can be like a dual use space where to try to set it up where they can use it for gym activities during the day. And then if you have an event, you can do additional parking. I don't think you need it during the day for parking, but for the events, it could be useful.
Right.
You could always talk about if you needed 20 spots, you could take 20 spots and then cut down the size of it for the gym space. But in its current shape, it's not very good. So.
Yeah.
And I do have a question about asphalt paving. It's going to be throughout the district. And I was just wondering if there was a lot of wear and tear on the asphalt due to the trucks going in and out as part of the renovations from the bond.
So we've been replacing sections in all of the capital projects that I've been involved with. Paula, it's something that you chase around the buildings, and we take care of the worst areas in each of the buildings. I can tell you that, and Brian or CJ, please correct me, we had a lot of pavement correction that was required by the site contractor at the middle school with all of the heavy loading going in and out. So there are walkthroughs with Brian, with the CM, with CJ, with the site designers on site, and we do track the condition. So the district should never be in a position where they're left with a worse condition than before construction. But there's a lot of chasing around issues. So we are not recommending replacing asphalt sections that were damaged by contractors from the last job. If that.
All right.
Michael, sorry, Paula. A lot of the things at the middle school were sequenced so that because asphalt goes down in several layers. We did the base layers first. We completed most of the work around the building, got to a point where we could do all the paving that was left throughout the rest of the last summer. That way it was fresh paving and there wasn't so much traffic on it at that time.
Great. Okay, thank you.
Anything else for Fort Ferry? So at Latham Ridge, abating the remainder of the VAT flooring, corridor doors, the popcorn texture plaster. There are some roof areas that need to be replaced. Just as a general note for the roofing system, everything that we did as roofing system on the 2017 capital project and moving forward is replacing the complete system down to the deck, evaluating the deck. If we have damaged deck, we replace it, but it's a complete system from the deck all the way up with new insulation. Everything that we do, we want to be sure the district has a 30-year warranty. So everything installed on the 2019, 2020 or summer of 21 has the longer warranties so that those are soup to nut, basically brand new systems. We're not patching on top of an old problem. So the approach did change from past projects where we're chasing leaks to really the system has reached its useful life. We're going to replace it with code compliant proper insulation, which also nets you better energy savings in the building. Because once you bring new roof, once you meet new energy code and bring 5.5 inches of insulation up, you are increasing the performance of the overall building. So that's something that we've been doing and would continue to do with the district. At Latham Ridge, we have a vault transformer. In the kitchen, we have a grease trap that needs to be replaced, mechanical equipment replacements, replacing stage electrical panels, original electrical panels, lighting upgrade, the camera security system, renovating art room 32 for updated program requirements. In other buildings, we've been renovating art rooms. This one did not get touched in the last capital project. So this is just keeping up with the other elementary school art rooms. And then renovating the cafeteria at Latham Ridge. The space is dated and would do better with updated lighting, mechanical systems, new doors, ceilings. It's a space that's ready for an update. Any questions at Latham Ridge? So Lavendel Elementary School, repairing and replacing storm damaged structures. These are catch basins that pick up rainwater in the ground. So these structures are some that need to be replaced. We have an existing exterior site stair, which goes from where the new main office is up to the playground area. That is not in great condition. That should be looked at for replacement. That is a structural issue from a category. Corridor doors, there is still some popcorn texture. There is hazardous material in the crawl space. There are areas of the roof that need to be replaced. Replacing the original wood floors throughout the building is something that, again, is a long-term DCS item. It kills me to recommend that, but the reality is the original beautiful parquet floors in that building are beyond refinishing at this point. And the seams are starting to open up, and the district can only put so much new finish and polish on them. They could buckle and create safety and tripping hazards. So in the past project, in the 2017 project, when we've replaced or renovated specific classrooms that had the flooring, we did go in and provide, a traditional VCT like we would in other floors. It's beautiful old wood flooring, but it's lived its life. That building has some original toilet rooms that need to be renovated. There's a lot of original masonry on the building that needs to be repointed. That's scraping out the existing mortar joints and tucking them to be sure that any cracks and we don't have water penetration into the building. We are recommending replacing the original galvanized water piping again. Mechanical equipment upgrades, replacing steam piping in the original building, stage electrical panels, original electrical panels that remain. There aren't that many electrical panels that are original in any of these buildings. And in a lot of the past capital projects, they have been being replaced. So there are just a few left in most buildings. Lighting upgrades, new security camera system, providing a backup generator, and renovating the original locker room shower area. There's a small locker room shower area between the kitchen and the gym which is not used for that function anymore, but it's never really been cleared out of lockers and the equipment. So it really should be, it could be a great storage space for PE and general building if it's renovated. So that's really what the idea is there. Any questions on Lavendel? Southgate Elementary School, we have repaving of the lower parking lot and tying the storm structures in the lower parking lot into the municipal storm system. Abating the remainder of VAT flooring, corridor doors, plaster texture, roof system, original toilet rooms. There is a cooler freezer at Southgate that needs to be replaced. Southgate is, I believe, Brian, the only building in the district where we have VCT that was installed in the early 90s, which 30 years in now is showing its useful life. So we're pulling original VAT out of buildings from the 50s, and the replacement VCT is starting now 30 years later. This is the only building where we've had that, but again, the material can only take so many recoating and finishing. That's going to be something that as we go on is going to show up more in buildings 10 years, 15 years down the road. Galvanized domestic water piping, mechanical equipment, stage electrical panels, original electrical panels, lighting upgrades. We have a grease trap that should be replaced at Southgate. And Southgate, there was a request to construct a unisex staff toilet room in the 2005 plan. Any questions at Southgate? Shaker Middle School. There are a handful of rooms left that have VAT. The majority of the building was taken care of in the 2017 capital project. There are some corridor doors and non-labeled glass that remain in specific corridors. There is roof area that needs to be replaced, specifically over the gym, the library. Those areas are the areas that weren't replaced in the last project. Got renovate original toilet rooms. There are a few of those that are left in the building. Replace the 2000 vintage cooler and freezer. Replace original galvanized domestic water piping. There is some mechanical equipment replacement that's existing. There's some original domestic water piping that we want to replace. Building wiring that goes back to old panels. Some lighting upgrades in rooms that we weren't able to capture in this project. And a newer request was to provide multiple art display enclosures throughout the building, just so there are places that we can present artwork in code compliant ways in hallways is what that's about. Any questions on Shaker Middle School? So Shaker High School is—
Mike, can I just add one thing? Just when we're talking about replacing the piping in the buildings, the lead water testing, it was obvious Shaker Middle School, with the amount of work done, it was our best tested building. We had like one failure, and it was a very old faucet that was just left behind. So while all of it wasn't replaced, it was very easy to see that the work done made a big difference. So compared to the other buildings.
Okay, so for Shaker High School, Shaker High School had the least amount of work done to it in the 2017 capital project. So there are a lot more items that were from 2015 that are still carrying through today. There is the repair and replace of storage drainage systems and pavers in the courtyard. There's repaving of the student parking lot and pavement near the receiving area. Replacing Walker field lighting system and control. So something we need to keep on the forefront of costs for future. Abating VAT flooring in a number of rooms. There is a considerable amount of the popcorn texture plaster on ceilings, soffits, and exterior walls in the high school. There's some transite panels and ceilings. Roof system replacement is extensive. There's a lot of roof area that is in really, really poor shape at the high school. Replace the skylight and the curb at Taft Cafeteria. Got renovate the original toilet rooms, replace corridor doors and non-labeled glazing, replace the existing dishwashing system, replace coolers 1 and 2, replace the chairlift in the existing building lobby. That's getting close to its useful intended life. So we should be tracking for that to be replaced probably in the 5 to 10 year range. Replacing ceilings throughout the building, that is a health and safety issue. That is an unsatisfactory. There are a lot of, because of roof leaks, there's an awful lot of stained and bad condition ceiling tiles throughout the building that really need to be replaced. It starts with replacing the ceiling. Putting a new tile in, which will just get stained in a matter of 6 months, isn't going to fix the problem. The building management system, so these are the controls, need to be replaced in that building. Line remaining, there's one section, I believe, Brian and CJ, that the original pool piping that needs to be relined. Extensive mechanical equipment replacements, including unit ventilators, air handling units, rooftop units, boilers, and the J-wing heat pumps. I believe there are 39 heat pumps in the J-wing. Upgrade ventilation systems throughout the building. There are a number of issues with ventilation systems or lack of ventilation in the original classrooms, which is why this is a health safety item that's deemed unsatisfactory. Also in the high school, we have replacing the sanitary lines for areas C, J, and G. Replacing the sanitary line between the G wing and La Follette cafeteria. Replacing the transformer serving the front half of the building. Replacing all original building wiring at panels replaced in past projects. Replacing the remainder of existing electrical panels and wiring throughout the building. Lighting upgrades throughout the building. Again, the domestic water piping needs to be replaced. Grease trap in the kitchen. The next series of items are all items that we had discussed in long-range planning back in 2015-16. These items also came up in different conversations that we started to have with long-range planning prior to COVID. So the items that we were talking about at the high school, I've added to this list just to be sure we have them for tracking. We had talked about gut renovations of the art rooms to meet current programmatic needs, creating new classrooms for photography and green screen filming, creating a large area for art gallery display, renovating the music rooms to meet current programmatic needs, creating a new large band orchestra rehearsal room, creating 4 to 6 new music practice rooms, gut renovating CTE rooms to meet current programmatic needs, gut renovating the science labs and classrooms to meet current programmatic needs, gut renovate and enlarge the auditorium, gut renovate and increase the size of the toilet room near the auditorium for public use when there are events going on. Gut renovate the H gym boys locker room to add storage and refurbish the toilet room, showers, and locker areas. Gut renovate F gym boys and girls locker rooms, and gut renovate home and careers classroom A138. We built in the current project an addition with 2 general home and careers classrooms, but we didn't do any work in their existing kitchen spaces. So all of these educational need items that the past 15 to 20 items I just discussed, we're all really continuing the programs that were developed and how spaces were renovated in the middle school in the last project and bringing some of that into the high school to keep that going. Are there any specific questions at the high school?
I have a question. This is Paula. Maybe it's been a lot longer than I thought. And I think you said something about is the chairlift the same thing as the elevator that's in the lobby?
So there's an elevator in the high school, which is in good condition.
Right.
It's a chairlift in a glass box in the lobby of the high school is what I'm talking about. The original lobby.
Right. Okay. That's different than the elevator.
And I also think, Paul, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I think you may be thinking of the middle school as well, where we did replace the elevator there. Okay.
No, we did the high school, and maybe it's just, I've been around for a while, so maybe it was longer ago than I'm remembering. But I do remember that we replaced parts of it even, or the whole lift in the lobby of Shaker High School.
Yeah, the lift itself, Paula, this is Dan. I don't remember that ever being replaced completely, but it may have been updated over time with some parts and things. But there was elevator work done, but never anything substantial on that glass enclosed chairlift that I recall.
I don't know. I'm remembering something like it was over $100,000. So but I could be remembering incorrectly. And it
Yeah,
was
maybe something was done internally. I don't know.
We had last year or 2 years ago, we had an emergency repair to the library elevator. That was about 90,000. You know, if that's
Yeah.
what you're considering.
No, I'm still thinking it was the front
Okay.
one. Okay, that's all right.
I can go back and look through records, Paula, but I'm not aware of that lift having been worked on other than maintenance. But I can
Okay.
double check everything.
All right, thank you. I do have if I could just backtrack for a minute. I'm sorry. Are there any buildings that still need backup generators?
You had that under one, Mike. You had it under.
I was
Loudenville.
at Loudenville. You were talking about.
Loudenville needs one. Blue Creek, Bell Hills, Southgate.
Oh,
They
No,
all have-
those have one. I'm just going through my head. I'm sorry.
yeah.
Loudenville, I know needs one, and the bus garage is one I think ultimately we'll talk about. And then Brian, correct me if I'm wrong. I don't remember if we talked about Goodrich.
Yeah, it's good. It's Goodrich, Transportation, and Loudenville are the three.
and I don't remember seeing any, but I'm assuming, and maybe not correctly, that those generators are then hooked up to LP tanks?
No, they're part of the gas service at those buildings.
Oh, okay.
There's gas service at each of the buildings. Yep. No, that's
Okay.
a great question. Great question.
Well, because I have one in an area, but we don't have gas, so we have LP. So that's why I was asking about that.
And you can also get them with diesel if you don't have gas service or access to LP. There's a number of different options.
So it's natural gas. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for the high school?
Yeah, I have a question. When you talk about the art wing and enlarging the auditorium, would that mean that we would be expanding those areas and also additional space for orchestra? So would we build out? I mean, how would we create that space or up?
There
There were several different options that were presented a number of years ago now.
Yeah.
And I would say at this point, nothing is set in stone, Michelle. I think it's all still to be determined if that's still a program requirement that the board feels should be, should have attention paid to it. We had some options that kept the existing auditorium and added a balcony in it. We had some that converted the existing auditorium into CTE space and built a new auditorium, which was really cost prohibitive. So nothing's designed, nothing's set in stone by any means. These were just areas that it was determined should get some attention because they had nothing had been done previously.
Right. Since they built the school when my mother was there.
Yep, that's right. Right.
And there are some large performance spaces that really are difficult to fit in an existing two-story building.
Yeah.
Probably would grow out. An orchestra room for 100 students is not a small room. The ones we did at the middle school are, they're good-sized rooms. So those are not rooms that would fit real well in what was an original art classroom.
Right.
So,
I mean, do we have the space to expand anywhere? Or, I mean, do we have to rethink? Can we build up? I mean, how does that work exactly?
I think ideally we want to try to make sure we maximize what you currently have for space and try to minimize the amount of additional work we would do with new construction. So it would really take a whole look at what was previously proposed and see what the best option would be to go forward, whether it made sense to add on or whether it makes more sense to just try to reuse what you currently have and reconfigure it.
Thank you.
Yep.
any other questions on the high school?
It's Sandy. I have a question about the high school, and that actually came up on all the schools about replacing all original electrical wiring. That seems like a really enormous project to me, like really daunting. So maybe you could talk me off that ledge, like there's not maybe that much original wiring left, or is that as an enormous a project as it sounds like to me?
It's a lot of work. Brian, can you speak to that?
Yep. So what we did is with the electricians, in-house electricians, after Bout Hills, we reviewed all the buildings. And what we have found in that review and during the project with a couple buildings, what some of the contractors have found is we have some very old wiring that's left in the buildings, and honestly, quite a bit of it. It was considered the source of the fire for Bout. And a lot of school districts are moving to this point to start taking care of that situation. There's questions about grounding with some of the old wiring, and and some of it's like really, Forts Ferry is just a few years older than some of the other buildings, and literally 1955, 1957, I believe, there's wiring from there in that wing. So yes, every building has it. The panels, the local panels were all replaced around 2000, but it was kind of commonplace at that point to leave the wiring. Now we're 20 years past that with more age and more, and just a change in how electrical wiring is done and can be done a little more safer. So
it is literally repulling the wire, replacing outlets in classrooms, reconnecting it to panels. Correct?
So it is a large project, right? So when we're looking at all the the bullets on each of these schools, there's a lot. It just feels like a lot, and some of them sound like bond projects that things that would be nice to have, or part of the a renovation and improvement in the school, and others really sound like when you talk about fires and electrical wiring, that seems like a high priority. And so it's just a sort of an overarching question with all the things on the list. I assume that someone at some point is going through all those things and prioritizing for budget purposes.
That will be the next step.
Something.
And I think, Sandy, what we really need to do is reorient our thinking. And so I think some of us have been around for a long time, and for a long time we avoided bonding until 2017. But if you notice, other schools almost universally run smaller bond projects, 20, 30, 40 million dollar bond projects where they address these issues periodically every 3 to 5 years. And I think really that we have to adopt that modality rather than looking at our previous model, which was to maintain that transfer to capital fund. But you can never keep up with the way you should be keeping up with your buildings by doing that very incremental, very little bit.
Yeah, I hear you, Joe. I know we had a methodology where cash was king, and we tried to do everything with cash. And I'm personally supportive of strategically using financing, bonding when it's necessary. Yes. So yeah, I'm supportive of that.
And I think that's probably how we have to, not probably, it's definitely how we have to look at this particular set of circumstances.
Especially, Joe, when you're starting to talk about major systems like roofs and electrical systems and water systems.
Yes.
I would just further support what you're describing, because that is something that we are seeing more and more of with districts that we're working with the $15 to $20 million projects, every 5 years. And the reason the 5-year window is discussed is because that's when your maximum cost allowance also is recharged by the state education department. So your aid is maximized at that point too. So it falls into not only a building condition survey window, but an aid window. So getting in a cycle like that for you would make a lot of sense as a district.
And then, going to your point too, Sandy, there are major programmatic initiatives, and Michelle, I know you were referring to this as well, that need to go to Shaker High School. Remember when we went in 2017 after our first defeat in December of 2016, we essentially not eliminated, but scaled down significantly the work on the high school. So I know Mr. Bogart presented, but there are needs in math, science, technology, and art that we do also need to address programmatically as well.
Okay, so I'll go on to Goodrich unless there are any other questions about Shaker High School. So at Goodrich, there's repaving, there's roofing, there's replacing steel windows and abating PCB caulk. There is some remaining VAT flooring. There's some hazardous material in the crawl space, some of the popcorn texture plaster on ceilings and soffits. There are mechanical equipment replacements required for unit ventilators, exhaust fans, air handling unit in the boardroom, all mechanical systems in the original building. Replacing remaining pneumatic controls with a new building management system. Replacing the original electric panels, galvanized domestic water piping replacement. That building, the fire alarm system does need to be replaced in a future project. Upgrading the ventilation systems throughout the building. That category, specifically the areas in question are the areas in the upper portion of the building where the area of the building on top of the stairs needs updates to ventilation system. From an SED classification, that categorically put the building into an unsatisfactory. There's also to upgrade the power and provide the standby generator that we had mentioned earlier. At Maplewood, there's quite a bit of work at Maplewood, replacing 12-inch storm pipe at Erie Street, repaving the parking lot and drives, creating a secondary vehicular exit from the property, abating hazardous material in the crawl space. There's a lot of interior plaster wall and ceiling repair that should be done. The roof and skylight system replacement. The roofing is as bad or worse at Maplewood than it is in areas of the high school. It's the only building where the roofing condition actually pushed the building to an unsatisfactory from an SED classification for a building. As a programmatic need, the building should have an elevator for access to the second floor. Replacing stair treads. The original stair treads in the building are in very poor condition. And the balcony on the guardrail is not to the current code required 42-inch height. That is also an unsatisfactory item that would need to be corrected. All of the windows should be replaced in the building. Corridor doors are in poor condition. Flooring throughout the building is not in good condition. There is vermiculite that's above the ceilings in the attic system. So to get there and do the work, you're replacing some impacted non-ACM building components by doing the abatement. There are original toilet rooms that should be renovating. The electric service to the building needs to be upgraded. We're recommending the 1200 amp service. CJ, that's required if an elevator goes in, correct?
Yeah. Excuse me. Yes, Mike.
So there are other needs for it, but we couldn't put an elevator in the building without first upping the power service that goes to the building. Replacing the original cast iron sanitary piping throughout the building. Removing original steam heat distribution piping, which is in the crawl space. There was a failure there last winter, Brian, I believe.
Yes. I think we fixed it over the summer or spring last year.
So that required an emergency abatement project and emergency piping replacement to get all done and in line, working around the leasee's schedule, correct?
Yep.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was agreeing with that was correct.
There are original electric panels that need to be replaced, lighting upgrades throughout the building. The galvanized domestic water piping needs to go, security camera system, mechanical equipment replacement, including original radiators. There are some exhaust fans and air handling units. Ventilation in the building needs to be upgraded. That pushes this building into an unsatisfactory. And the fire alarm system is at the end of its useful life, which is another unsatisfactory here. A programmatic need that we did list is the building is without a kitchen. So how, if the district, is going to continue using the building for academic or lease educational purposes, it's tough for a program there without having a kitchen that can support the student load. Any questions on Maplewood?
I have a question for Joe on Maplewood. Are we required to continue to own that building for any reason?
I want to make sure I heard you, Sandy. Are we required to own the building?
Yeah. Is there some, I don't want to say that like I'm suggesting this, but could we sell that building if we
Yes.
wanted to?
Yes,
Okay.
we could.
Any other questions on Maplewood? Okay, so the Maplewood Annex, there's minor work there that needs to be done. That building altogether is in pretty good shape. There are some plaster ceilings that should be replaced. There's a recoating of roofing system on that building. There's some repaired exterior stucco and stone veneer. And the building could use a new security camera system and new cameras. Bus garage, install perimeter lighting around the building property to replace paving around the bus garage, replace office ceiling and lighting, replace 2 in-ground lifts and replace them with 4-post lifts, get rid of the in-ground pit, close it up, clean it up. 4-post lifts are what a lot of districts are moving to, and then you don't have the pit to worry about. There is some pipe insulation for domestic water lines that needs to be abated. Toilet rooms need to be gut renovated and reconfigured for accessibility. Lighting upgrades throughout the building, replace original galvanized domestic water piping, security camera system. So there's security camera systems which you've had at all the buildings. At the bus garage, they also have need for a new building security system, which would utilize proximity cards. That's door access, a door access system. There is a request to install an automatic bus washing system with the appropriate stormwater retention system, and to expand the office to create a separate dispatch office from the current office. Any questions on the bus garage? Okay, the maintenance building, repave parking lot and drive, roof and skylight system replacement. That is an unsatisfactory. The roof is old metal panels, or they're in poor condition. Repair and replace the exterior wall panels and insulation. Those are also original and in real poor condition. Those were both unsatisfactory. Replace the steel windows throughout the building and replace the overhead doors at the garage base. Brian, do you have anything to add about your building?
Just don't make it look too nice. We like it. We don't know one taking it on us.
There are also some miscellaneous buildings that I didn't put in the slideshow. There's the new concession building at Walker Field, the storage building at Walker Field. Those are all satisfactory and new structures, so I didn't include those in the presentation. Just to bring it around to where we are with the overall building ratings. So in 2021 BCS, what's going into the state, all of the elementary schools that are used by the district are satisfactory. Forts Ferry and Latham Ridge were both unsatisfactory in 2015, so those have come into the satisfactory rating in the current BCS with the work that was done. Shaker High School was unsatisfactory in 2015 and remains unsatisfactory now, as is Goodrich, Maplewood, and the maintenance building. Maplewood Annex and the bus garage are both satisfactory. And in terms of what Joe had mentioned from the prior projects, when the scope was originally developed in 2015, the scope and the costs were based on the 2015 BCS and the educational programming. When it went back out as final scope and was voted on the second time in May of 17 and passed, the values are in that corner or in that column of what was included in the $106 million project. You can see in the delta the difference from the original vote in 12-16 to the second vote in 5-17. And Shaker Middle School alone had over $70 million worth of scope removed from the 196 million project to the $106 million project.
High school, Mike, high
Oh,
school.
I'm sorry, high school. Yes, I'm sorry, high school. All of the elementary schools also had some hits from the original budgets to what was in the 106 project. So a tremendous amount of scope was captured and work was done in the 106. Again, 2 of the elementary schools did go from unsatisfactory to satisfactory, which is great. But there's still work to do specifically at the high school and Maplewood, depending on how it's to be used in the future. So are there any questions that you have on process or next steps with all this information?
I'll ask the question since I wasn't on the board the last time around. This is a recommendation, right? These are the list of things that you recommend that we do in order to pass to clean up the deficiencies, basically.
It's actually a visual inspection. It's a reporting of the state of your systems. It doesn't mean you need to move forward with them in a capital project, but we are required to report them to the state. For example, buildings were unsatisfactory in 2015 that are still unsatisfactory.
Okay, but all of these lists of I'm trying to remember which are, just to come up with an example. So looking at like the bus garage, right, where you talk about, correct foundation wall issues at the bus storage and replace the office ceiling and provide new lighting and so on. If they're not a health and safety issue, that's just a recommendation? Or is that a recommendation that we need to address at some point in order to, correct the deficiency?
They're recommendations that we would recommend you do at some point in the future, whether it's out of a maintenance budget, whether it's out of a future capital project budget, whether Brian and his current budget structure allows some of the work to be taken on with other funding streams. There are things that we want to be sure are kept on the district's radar. Other things, if there's a programmatic need change or if enrollment changes, some of these things may not need to be done.
Sure.
We choose to focus on the ones that are health, safety, or structural related because things like roofing need to get done.
Right. Okay. So this is maybe a good way for those of us who are less well-versed in construction and funding issues. This is not a bad sort of a priority list. These are the things that have more urgency than others.
That's correct. And what's going to come out of this process would be a 5-year plan. And that's where we worked with Brian and long range planning and Joe and everyone involved and say which one of these items are our priorities that need to be done in the next 1 to 5 years.
Okay.
Of those items, what might be a future capital project, what might be done out of an operating budget, if there is an operating budget to do it out of, what's the funding stream? Things like specific roof areas whose warranties don't come up until 2027 can maybe wait till a 5 to 10 year cycle, but we should still be tracking them so that the board is always aware that we finished a huge project, but we're not done. It's
Right.
it's just like a house. There will always be other things that need to be done because it's primarily infrastructure based.
Okay.
Mike, I would just add when you're dealing with over 1 million square feet of space in a district the size of yours, as you said, Mike, there's always work that's going to be a priority. The 5-year plan, which is actually a stated required 5-year plan for the district, the tool will really turn into probably a 10-year plan. And it would be something where you could start to think about how you may want to bond projects, as we were talking about earlier, over a 10-year cycle and which priorities would rise to the top in that 10-year cycle. So the roofs, the highest priorities that Mike was describing here, those would be the ones that we would help you prioritize first and then tackle everything else over a 10-year period or longer.
Okay.
I think it's also important to note that some systems that are rated unsatisfactory by the state, there is an arbitrary cutoff time. Some of them are rated arbitrary by age alone, when in fact those systems could be functioning rather well, have been maintained regularly through a qualified maintenance plan with qualified maintenance personnel. So, within those unsats obviously are, various prioritizing of needs as well.
And when you see the line items for all of the buildings specifically related to asbestos, every capital project that I've done with the district since 2007, I believe was the first I was involved with, has always tackled as much scope as they could afford in that project. So in some projects we can do 3 classrooms in every building, other projects we can do 20 classrooms in a building. The goal is to get rid of all of it. It's to set a path forward so that these lists say remaining, not building wide. And maybe when it comes to the electrical wiring, there are wings that are done in every future capital project in buildings until eventually it's all done, which is hopefully less scary than saying this building needs to be done by 2028. Because that's a lot of money being spent at one time to do that specific item.
Joe, what is our building aid?
It's been favorably readjusted. Mary, Scott, do you have the latest on that?
The unenhanced is in the 62% range off the top of my head.
And Mary, that's a very positive move because we were around 49, 50% unenhanced. So this is a very favorable outcome.
So Joe, that said, what are our next steps?
I think our next steps is for us to come. I think we have 2 components here. I think we have the building conditions, the maintenance and the upgrade and the repair of systems, and then we have the programmatic piece as well. So I think it would be, the next steps would be for the leadership team to come off with a priority listing to do, as Mike said, to roll out a 5 or a 10-year plan, and then come up with a proposal for financing that. It would be looking at perhaps a bond. It would look at perhaps using some or all of the capital reserve or reserves. And we may be talking to you about increasing or starting another reserve to help supplement that and defer the cost of it. It would be to actually put down the plan and talk about what we're going to do and how we're going to finance it and when we're going to do it. This tonight really is stating essentially these are the areas in need of attention. And so now we would have to turn around and, start attacking this list.
Are there ways, or is there any remaining, and I don't know what is left of the sort of the COVID money that could be applied to some of these things? Certainly HVAC improvements would seem to have been appropriate. I don't know how much of that funding is left or may be available in the future, and whether that would be an appropriate use or not, but it does seem like at least some of this work could fall into that category.
Well, we did use some of that funding to do improvements in HVAC. That has been done already. I think, again, you have to be very specific and mindful of grant requirements when it comes to making capital improvement. Certainly air quality is relevant in that area. And we did improve air circulation, and we did also improve filtration with the COVID relief money. Scott or Brian, do you want to comment on either component of that?
We did do some, Brian could speak more specifically to the mechanicals, but we did do some rooftop units. Yeah, in addition to all the filtration and the MERV 13 filters, a lot of the funding was used in that area.
Yeah, so we replaced 2 or 3 older rooftop units at the high school. We did review our system. It came out pretty good. A lot of what's in there, I think, is, replacing multiple items from 1960 in certain wings. That's some of the upgrades, and some of the other upgrades are some of the things from 91. The energy recovery units bringing in fresh air don't have enough makeup heat to keep up during the winter. So the old practice would be to shut them down so it doesn't get cold in there. But we weren't supposed to do that, and with COVID, we really don't want to be doing that anymore at all. So that would be to upgrade them to get heat properly and still keep the fresh air.
So the answer to your question is yes, some of that has been and can be used.
Thanks.
Yes.
Are there any other questions? I don't think there are. All right. Thank you very much, Mike and CJ and Dan. And certainly thank you, Brian, for your leadership as well. It's very important to have someone like you leading the way for North Colony. So I will take a motion to leave long-range planning and Mr. Johnson, and a second, Mrs. Nardolillo, and all in favor. And I'll take that as an adjournment too. All right. All right. Thank you again, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Everyone. Have a good
Bye.
night.
Good, everyone.
Yep.
Bye.